So we all heard the sad news this week that James Earl Jones has passed away at the age of 93, and this man was the voice of our childhood. We all know him, obviously, as Mufasa and Darth Vader, but as a kid, you're not really paying attention to this, right? Or for what it's worth, the lessons that you should be taking away from these characters and what they were actually saying. You're just kind of watching a movie, procrastinating, doing your homework a little bit, your times tables, or you're waiting for your next meal to just be placed right in front of you. But as you get older and the more you think about it, these characters really offer some great fucking insight, and we all took it for granted. Just looking at James Earl Jones' characters, Mufasa obviously is a strong, noble leader that instills in his son the ideology to face challenges head on. In Field of Dreams, at the end of the movie, he reminds you to remain hopeful in life. Like he says, people will come, Ray. As the blind guy in The Sandlot, he's essentially the epitome of don't judge a book by its cover. And you can even learn a handful of life lessons from one of the greatest villains of all time, Darth Vader. For example, you can always overcome hardship through resilience. This dude began his life as a slave, worked hard to become the youngest Jedi to serve on the Jedi High Council. He was a successful general in the Republic, and then he eventually managed to become the most powerful warlord in the galaxy despite being on fucking life support, basically. He also teaches us that it's never too late to make the right choice. Now, these are just a few things that were brought to life thanks to James Earl Jones, but it got me thinking, who are the other just wise fictional characters from my childhood that I took for granted? So today we're getting nostalgic as I resurface 3 of the wisest and most insightful fictional characters from my youth, in my opinion, of course. First, let's start off with the GOAT, Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. In every episode this man was in, you could guarantee you're getting at least one solid piece of advice from this guy. That little bitch, Zuko, was always just shitting on him too, but for the most part, he just remained unbothered by it because he valued humility and compassion. And throughout the series, you got a glimpse of Iroh's kind of like tragic past and why he's helping Zuko, but nothing broke your heart as much as that one episode, The Tales of Ba Sing Se. Do you remember this episode? So you're following him throughout his day in the city as he shops around and makes these small efforts to help like people and kids in need. Someone even attempts to rob him during the day, and he disarms this dude like a badass and then proceeds to even give that guy some advice. But then towards the end of the episode, he makes his way to a tree outside of the city, and you realize all day he was buying items to set up a memorial for his son who died in the Battle of Ba Sing Se. And he says, "Happy birthday, my son, if only I could have helped you." Then he proceeds to just cry and sing this horribly sad song and rip your fucking heart to shreds. And you're just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I'm 11 years old. I shouldn't have to be dealing with this type of trauma in my life, But go look this scene up right now, and I guarantee you will tear up. But this is what makes Iroh such an amazing character. Despite his loss and hardship, he tries to make his way through life focusing on the positive and helping others. And there are literally dozens of Iroh quotes where he's emphasizing this. For example, one that I found was, "You must never give in to despair. Allow yourself to slip down that road and you surrender to your lowest instincts. In the darkest time, hope is something you give yourself. That is the meaning of inner strength." And I couldn't possibly comprehend that at that age, but thank you, Nickelodeon, and thank you, Uncle Iroh. You didn't have to do that, but you did, and I appreciate it. Another true OG in the world of wisdom is Mr. Feeny in Boy Meets World. Mr. Feeny was like my generation's Mr. Miyagi, only white. Dumbass Ben Savage was always messing up, man. Mr. Feeny always came in at the 11th hour to just drop some wisdom and help this kid pick up the pieces. And then the very next episode, Corey would do it all over again. And for years too, from middle school teacher to principal to professor, how this man managed to find time to have a successful teaching career while holding this kid's hand through life, I'll never know. But the majority of lessons you learn from Mr. Feeny revolve around just love and friendship, whether it comes from family or friends or significant others. One of his more popular quotes is, "There's no greater aspiration than to have love in our lives." But as their neighbor and teacher, Mr. Feeny gets to witness these kids grow up together, and as they do, they often get into like fights and shit happens, but he was always there to reassure Corey what it meant to be a good friend and, to be there for someone. His most famous quote, though, is simple but significant, which is why he's in my top 3 for wise fictional characters. But it's, believe in yourselves, dream, try, do good. All right, number 3 might seem a little out of left field, but trust me on this one. Steve from Blue's Clues. So one of the more obvious themes of this show is that asking for help is a strength. Steve is just constantly going around asking everyone for help. He's got mailbox, Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper, shovel and pail. But that's a good fucking lesson, man. I mean, and it's something I personally struggle with. It's not always easy to ask for help. But the next lesson we learned from Steve is directly from Angela Santamero, who is the co-creator of Blue's Clues and the creator of Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. She actually just came out with a book this year called Life Clues, Unlocking the Lessons to an Exceptional Life, which I look forward to listening to. But she stresses on the idea of being an attentive listener. When we were young and watching Blue's Clues, this was really one of the only shows on television where Steve broke the fourth wall. He was directly just interacting with us. But Angela says, especially in today's society, it is harder than ever to be present. As a society, we're always multitasking, or we're on our phones, or there's just so much sensory information that can make us disconnected, and there's great power in giving someone your full attention. Steve from Blue's Clues is actually going viral on social media right now because he began posting these videos where he's just actively listening. He sits down, looks directly at the camera, and just says, "Hi, what's new?" And then for about 30 seconds, he just sits there in silence and nods. Then he'll wrap up and say he just wanted to check in, and then he'll give you just like a quick compliment, and that's it. But it is just so strangely powerful and nostalgic. His latest video has almost 20 million views on TikTok, and it goes against every short form video tactic we've been told for the last 2 years. There's no quick cuts. There's no crazy hook. There's no engaging script. It's just an old friend from your childhood asking you how you're doing. And I love it. Do you know how bad some people just want to be heard? And it's the easiest thing you can do to just check in on someone and give them your full attention. And that's why Steve is one of the most sincere fictional characters of my childhood, because even after all of this time, he's still checking in to say hi. He's also one hell of a doodler, too. And this dude would just whip out his notebook and a green crayon and go to fucking town. He didn't even need to run off to college like that, but he did, and that's okay. Now, there's obviously a bunch of other wise fictional characters that we all hold near and dear to our hearts, right? And the one thing I love about this is that it's different for every generation. It's all so unique. Some of these characters I considered, including in here, were Mr. Rogers, who preached kindness. Professor X from X-Men believed in the power of redemption. Dumbledore was all about love, right? There's Gandalf, Mary Poppins, Yoda. The list goes on and on. And then for newer, younger generations, I hear the new kind of big show to watch is Bluey. And let me tell you, this is probably one of the only reasons why I would want to have a kid right now is to watch this show, because I hear amazing things. To make a show that subliminally touches on how to navigate the ups and downs of parenthood is absolutely just genius, I think. But that's all I've got for this week. Although it's sad to hear we lost a legend like James Earl Jones, he left behind a legacy that will last many generations. If there are any wise fictional characters that resonated with you, I would love to hear them. But yeah, it's kind of fun to look back and think about the characters that you grew up with. So anyways, I will talk to you next week.